Hey folks, back with another review. Today I'm looking at the SOG Trident. This is model number TF-2. I've owned a few SOG folders in the past. I actually own a couple right now. And if you've watched some of my other reviews, you know that I would agree with the general consensus of the knife community that SOG has a little bit of work to do as far as matching the quality and performance of some of their competitors in a similar price range. But overall, I think that they make some pretty good folders, and I think that the SOG Trident here is actually one of their better designs, and I've been pretty happy with it so far. I've been carrying it for about a month and a half, and it's got a lot of things that I like, and then it's got very few things that I don't like. So I'm pretty excited to say that I think I've finally found the SOG folder that I can definitely recommend. I really like this knife, and I think that it makes a good choice. It might be a little bit a higher price than I'd like, or it might be a little bit higher price than some people would be comfortable with, considering the materials that you get. But I do think that it's pretty innovative, and I think that it would make a good choice for an EDC knife for most folks. So let me jump right into some of the specifications here. This is assembled in the United States, at least according to SOG's website. So as far as where the parts are actually made, I couldn't say for sure, but they do list it as assembled in the US, so take that as you will. I would say this is probably based off of their seal knife and their seal pup knife as far as the kind of Bowie style or clip point style blade on here, which I find very attractive. I think it's a really good looking blade profile. So if you're looking to get this, but maybe you don't want this exact configuration, there are several other variations available. Most of them will have the same basic handle, but there is also the Mini Trident series, which has a smaller blade, smaller handle, but same basic overall design. And then there's also a Tanto style blade, and you can also get this partially serrated. You can get the handle in different colors. So there are quite a few options available if you like the design, but maybe you want a few extra choices or different options. There's going to be probably something out there for you. I bought this about a month and a half ago. I actually bought it from a YouTube member named Shao Kim, really nice guy with a great channel of his own, and he gave me a really good price on this. So I didn't buy it new, but I will say that it arrived to me in like new condition. So for the most part, I'm going to kind of review this as if it was close to new condition. The blade length is 3.75 inches, so just shy of 4 inches, and it's a good length. I'd say that overall this is a medium to large size folder. It is 8.5 inches overall when opened, and when closed you're looking at just under 5 inches. I think it's like 4 and 15/16 inches, somewhere around there. I wasn't able to measure it exactly, but somewhere just shy of 5 inches. So good size. It's going to fit easily in most folks' pockets. You shouldn't have any trouble clipping this in your pants pocket. Weight is 3.6 ounces according to SOG. On my scale I get 3.4 ounces. So, somewhere in the 3.5 ounce range. Nice and light, not too heavy, and it feels great. It doesn't feel, like it's weighing you down either in your pocket or in your hand. So that's nice. Blade steel is AUS 8. Like a lot of SOG's other folders, it is actually not marked on the blade itself, but according to their website, it is AUS 8 steel. And I haven't had any rust issues or anything like that, so thus far it's been fairly corrosion and rust resistant, which is always nice. We don't like getting little speckles on our blades. Blade thickness is 1/8 of an inch. Very thin, I think, for the size of the knife. It's very, very thin. It's almost like a kitchen knife in its thinness, but it makes the knife an excellent slicer. It pierces, penetrates, and slices easily. So this would make a really great choice if you're cutting up a lot of cardboard, cutting through tape, cutting through twine or paracord often. This would be a really good pick for that. Blade shape, as I mentioned, is a Bowie style or clip point style blade, and it's probably, to me, it's its most striking feature. I really love the shape of this blade. It's got sort of an old-fashioned or traditional Bowie style shape to it, and I really like that. So as far as the looks of it, it's one of my favorite knives that I own. Blade grind appears to be a saber grind or a flat grind. I can't quite tell if it's hollow. It doesn't appear to be, so I'm going to say it's basically a saber grind. And it's ground very high. You can see where the swedge comes in at the spine. It's almost a full flat grind. And like I mentioned before, that thinness with this blade grind makes it an excellent slicing blade. Handle material is GRN, or glass reinforced nylon. So if you've dealt with FRN or Zytel, Basically, that's what you're getting right here. Very similar in its, in its overall feel and weight. And it is held together with some hex screws. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 holding the body together. 1 to attach the clip, and then 1 at the pivot. So if you've got a hex driver, those are easy enough to remove if you need to open it up, do any cleaning or maintenance. It is skeletonized inside. I will employ my Quark, or 47's Quark QTLC to kind of show you, since the lighting's kind of bad right now. You can kind of see that the handle is skeletonized inside, and towards the back, this might be harder to see, there are some partial steel liners in the back of the handle there inside. So fairly light, but still very strong. There's no twisting or flexing or deformation or anything when you squeeze the knife, or holding it in various positions, or using it aggressively. I didn't feel the handle bend or flex at all, so that's really nice. It is a closed design, so if you need to clean it out, you'll be getting in there with a Q-tip or maybe a paper towel and a toothpick, something like that. Of course, except for the little cutting groove, which I'll get to here in a moment. So you can see there is one little opening where that groove runs through the side of the handle. And as far as texturing, it's got sort of like a diamond pattern, and it fades out towards the ends. Very comfortable, provides some decent grip, but not overly aggressive. Overall I find it nice, very comfortable, and this is about the kind of texturing that I find acceptable on a knife. Anything more than this seems to get too rough and gritty. It can kind of tear up your pockets, might even get uncomfortable in your hand after using it for a long time, but I find this to be very nice. Jimping, we've got jimping all over the place, so if you are a jimping fan, you're going to really like this knife. We've got a large section of wide serrations at the back of the blade there, at the thumb ramp. More at the spine where the blade meets the spine there, more at the base of the handle at the back, some on the inside there, and then some in that finger groove. And they work very well. They're, again, just like the texturing, they're not overly aggressive, so they do provide a fairly positive grip, but without being irritating or kind of wearing or annoying your hand after a while. So there's not really much handle irritation as far as the jimping. However, I did find that when using the knife for a long time and keeping a tight grip on it, I did kind of push my finger up against the blade safety, and that can be kind of annoying. Depending on the size of your hand or how you're holding the knife, that can kind of rub underneath your finger, and it might just be a little bit irritating. It wasn't a deal breaker for me, but it's just something to note. Speaking of the handle, we do have a lanyard hole at the back, and similar to Spyderco's Paramilitary 2, this one has a very large and generous lanyard hole, so that you can fit some 550 through there, and in fact you can double up that paracord and run it through twice. So that's really nice, and it doesn't really get in the way. And for those of you who like lanyards, you're going to have a lot of options available to you as far as how much you can fit through there and how you want to loop it through or weave it. Pocket clip we do have. It is tip up only, but it is left and right side compatible. So lefties and righties can each wear this in either pocket. And as long as you don't mind that it's tip up only, you'll be good to go. That's my preference, so for me I don't mind that it doesn't have tip down. And pocket clip strength is excellent. It's of a nice thick stock. It's very springy. Not too tight. It's getting towards too tight for me. It's pretty darn snug when it goes into my pocket, but it's really nice because there's just no chance that it's going to come out. So I would say the pocket clip strength is excellent. And as far as how it carries in your pocket, it carries very well. Sits low. You can see it's got that low riding clip that comes all the way up and over the butt of the knife. So this will sit completely flush in your pocket, and you won't even see an inch of the knife unless you're looking right down over the top. So that's always nice for people who like a discreet carry. Not a big deal for me, but it can be nice, and it definitely keeps any part of the knife from sticking out too far and maybe getting caught on something or snagged. The only thing is that the lanyard will sit down within your pocket as well, so if you like to have it hanging out to make it a little bit easier to pull out, that depth might be a very small issue, but not a big deal overall. Balance on the knife is really nice. Front to back, it's very even. It's not blade or handle heavy, so it feels just right when carrying or cutting. And the opening mechanism is a dual thumb stud, and it opens easily left or right-handed. It is assisted opening, so it is spring-loaded. And when you hit those thumb studs, that blade just leaps right out. Of course, not when I do it on camera with my left hand, but it is very fast. I'm not a big fan of assisted openers, as some of my longtime viewers know, but it does work very well, and the blade opens quickly. So if you like a fast opening assisted opener, you will like this knife. As far as the smoothness of the pivot, very smooth. I don't feel any grittiness. I don't feel any kind of scratchiness or anything. It's not wearing from one side to the other. And as far as locks, we have what's called SOG's Arc Actuator Lock, which sort of works like a cross between a Benchmade's Axis lock and a lockback design, in that there's a bar that seats in the tang of the blade when it's opened all the way and locks in place. So you pull down on that little thing, and you can't do this one-handed. You pull down on that little stud that sticks out, and then you can close the blade with your other fingers and then close it the rest of the way. But it is not exactly the same as an Axis lock, but very functional. It locks very solidly. I'm really pleased with the performance of the lock, and it closes quickly with one hand, which is always nice. If you're holding something else in your other hand, or if you just need to put it away quickly with one hand, you can. Although you do have to overcome that assisted opening spring as you close it, so keep that in mind. And then we also have a blade safety, and when it is engaged, the blade cannot be opened. Now, I've never had any issues with this knife opening in my pocket accidentally or when I didn't want it to, and I don't really care for blade safeties in general. I think it's just one thing that gets in the way. And one thing that I have had happen is a couple times I've had the blade safety, probably from my own accidentally grabbing it out of my pocket and touching myself, but I have had it inadvertently engage, and when I went to open the knife it was locked, which I guess, you know, there are worse problems to have, but just something to note. So I'd rather it wasn't there, and like I said, when you're gripping the knife sometimes it can get in the way, but it is there. The way it's designed is that there is a little red bit of marking inside that when the lock is, or the safety is disengaged, there's red showing to kind of let you know that it's ready to fire open. And as you can see in there, the red paint or marking on mine has worn away. I was trying to clean inside of there with a toothpick, and the tip of a toothpick concealed and wrapped in some paper towel, and it scratched it away. And I wasn't being overly aggressive with it, so whatever SOG used to mark that little that little space in there just wasn't very effective. Doesn't really matter. Like you see, if I turn off my light, you can't even really see it, so no big deal. But it's just not very permanent, whatever it was. Okay. Blade centering is very nice. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. So it sits in the handle, it kind of leans to one side, but there's no rubbing on either of the scales or the liners inside, so you're not going to have any issues there. At least I haven't, and I haven't heard online of anybody having any complaints as far as the blade rubbing inside or being too far from one side to the other. As far as lockup, wobble, and play, very, very, very little, which for SOG folders is excellent. A lot of times SOG has a lot of slop or play or wobble in the blade and handle joint, and I detect very little. It has developed some over the first couple weeks that I used it. It started to get a little bit looser, and if I really kind of wrench on it with my fingers, I can feel a tiny bit of play, but perfectly acceptable, and I'm very pleased with the lockup. And since it developed that little bit of play, it hasn't gotten any worse. So I've been very pleased with that, and that's exciting to be able to say in this review that this SOG folder for me has been completely solid, and I have no safety concerns. I have no issues with that lockup, and I don't suspect that it's ever going to be a problem. It seems like it's going to hold up to some long-term use and maybe even a little bit of abuse. As far as any noises or rattling parts are concerned, we do have a little bit in that arc actuator. When the knife is closed, I don't know if you can hear that, this little lock, now it doesn't want to do it, this little lock will rattle sometimes. You can kind of hear it sliding from one side to the other. But not a big deal. If you want a really, really quiet knife, that might be an issue, but you can kind of hear me wiggling it with my thumb a little bit. But no big deal. Just something to note. Overall strength is good to excellent. Like I said, that lockup, the blade, and the handle are all very solidly built and well designed, and I think that it's going to hold up to some aggressive use. And I do put plenty of trust in this knife, so I wouldn't be concerned taking this knife and using it, as my main blade. Edge bevel symmetry could be a little bit better, but for the price that you'll pay for this knife, which is probably anywhere from $50 to $70, I think that the factory grinds are pretty darn good overall. Cuts very well, slices excellently, like I mentioned before. It holds an edge pretty good, AUS 8. I'd say this is on par, typical for most AUS 8 steel, as far as it being within the standard, the norm for this type of steel. You'll be sharpening it or perhaps stropping it semi-frequently, a couple times a month to keep it super sharp for standard, everyday use. If you were going to use it aggressively, if you're using it outdoors for cutting wood or whittling or something, which I've done with this, you'll be sharpening it quite a bit more often, maybe every day or every other day, if you're going to use it for some, some heavy duty, extensive cutting day after day. You'll be having to do a little bit extra upkeep on that edge, but again, no big deal. I really like the looks. I actually love the design of this knife. One thing that I don't really care for on this knife, other than the blade safety, is the little cutting groove that SOG decided to include. They've put this in here as like a strap cutter or cord cutter, and it will work for some stuff. It works fine for like fishing line. It cuts quickly. Paracord and straps, less so, and that's the reason I don't really like it, and I think it was more of a gimmick than anything else. If they had just filled in the handle there and put it straight across, I would feel a lot better about this knife as far as the looks of it and the overall design. To me, this was just sort of a novelty, something to kind of catch someone's eye when it's hanging on the shelf at the store. And of course, the overall usefulness of this feature is going to be entirely dependent on how well you maintain the edge on your knife. And in order for this to work well, you need to have a razor's edge on this blade. I found that when it's even the slightest bit dull and away from that shaving edge, you're not going to be cutting much of anything beyond fishing line in here. So if you're a fisherman, maybe that would be a big boon to you. But for just about everyone else, I would say don't really factor this in when you're looking to buy this knife. I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that that little feature there. Just go for the actual main edge itself, as far as how well this is going to perform and cut for you. But those are really the blade safety and that little cutting groove are my two main complaints. If I had to choose a couple flaws, I would say those were it. So overall fit and finish is really good for the price. The GRN, that glass reinforced nylon, can be a little bit fidgety as far as the two, how it's sandwiched together there. It's not perfectly aligned, but within the price range, I would say is acceptable. So let me give you a quick rundown on my pros and my cons, and kind of just give you a quick overview of how I'm feeling about the knife in general. The pros are that it comes in at a decent price. I think that it could be a little bit cheaper for the materials, or a little bit less expensive, I should say, for the materials that are offered, but not bad overall. It is light and comfortable to hold and carry. It's got a nice blade shape, and I love the thumb ramp. I think, you guys know I'm not a big jimping fan, and I don't like when there's the big raised hump at the back of a knife where my thumb wants to rest. And this knife, let me pick it up and show you again. This knife lets me put my thumb all the way forward on the blade, which this is my preferred position. I like to keep the thumb moved farther up the blade rather than keeping it back here at the connection point between the handle and the tang of the blade. So I like that thumb ramp a lot. And there aren't a lot of knives that offer that really far forward grip like that. So that's cool. It's got really strong lockup. It's got a strong clip. It stays closed well. It slices great. It pierces well. And it works well ambidextrously, so lefties, this would be a good knife. You can even close it. Again, I'm going to do it bad on camera, but after you get it open, you can use either your index finger or your middle finger to close that lock, and then close the blade the rest of the way. So I know some knives are a little bit harder for lefties to close with one hand, and this one I don't think is bad at all. And I think the only reason I'm a little slow at it is simply because I'm right-handed. So that's about it for the pros. As far as the cons, I don't like the blade safety. I wish it wasn't there. I think it's more a nuisance than anything else. I think the cutter is kind of gimmicky, that little cutting groove. SOG likes to kind of hype that up, and I don't really think it's that useful of an addition. And the blade did develop a little bit of play over time, but to me it's totally acceptable within this price range, and I really have to wrench on the blade and handle. I really have to crank on it to even have it exhibit that play, so I don't think that's a big deal. I've used it for, like I said, whittling wood, carving some walking sticks, work tasks, general around the house stuff, cutting open packages, paracord projects, that kind of stuff. So SOG kind of has a reputation for less than stellar folding knives. I own a few, and they all kind of reside towards the cool to look at category, but they're not usually my favorites. The Trident is the best folder from SOG that I've tried so far, and I really like it. I highly recommend it. Real quick, because this review, like a lot of my reviews, is going on for a very long time, let me back out here and I'm going to show you a couple common knives just to give you sort of a size reference, and some other stuff that's similar within this price range. So right here we have a Spyderco Enduro, which to me would probably be this knife's closest competitor. This knife is not assisted opening, but you can see that as far as blade and handle length, they're very similar. The Spyderco uses that FRN handle, which is really similar in the overall feel and weight. and they're within the same price range. You know, the Spyderco Delica, or excuse me, Endura, you might even pay a little bit less for the Spyderco than the SOG. Between the two, if you didn't own either one, or maybe you were just starting out buying or collecting knives, I would actually recommend the Spyderco Endura first, but only slightly. If you really prefer the design of the SOG Trident, by all means buy it first. It's an excellent knife, and I think that it holds its own, you know, compared to the Spyderco. If you like the assisted opener, that's a nice fun little feature. If you like the arc lock, that's also a nice little, you know, alternative to what Spyderco offers. And then another knife, let me kind of put on camera here and give you a sort of a really a size comparison, but this is SOG's own Flash 2, and it's got a little bit smaller of a blade, smaller handle, drastically different design, but another that uses that arc actuator lock, has the same blade safety, and is also an assisted opener. So that might be another choice if you want something a little bit smaller, and if you would wanted like a full flat ground blade. And then this is just be for a size comparison. This is the Kershaw Skyline, and that's just because this is a common knife that a lot of you folks probably own. If you want to see how it's gonna be size-wise to that, so kind of fitting in that medium to large role. You can see it's quite a bit bigger than the Skyline. I really do like the SOG Trident, and I can't say it enough. I was really surprised as I was using it over the last few weeks. I expected that I wasn't going to like it, and I really do, and I think that's really cool. So overall recommendation, absolutely. I really do like it, and despite the few flaws that I mentioned, I think that it would make an excellent knife. If you're looking at it and you think that it might be a good choice, I say go ahead, buy it, try it, and see if you like it, because I think that you definitely will. So that's pretty much it, my whole review. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.